This is episode 47 of Standing Out. Standing Out is a remarkable interview-style podcast with the intention to highlight women and men making outstanding contributions in their field. This podcast is generously sponsored by Think Global. Think Global is a business advisory firm working with women entrepreneurs around the globe to scale their businesses to the next level. Today, I'd like to welcome Galya Westler. Galya is an entrepreneur and founder of Plazus Technologist Incorporated, a mobile social app builder that launched a few months ago. Galya's background is as a software engineer and in senior product management, building over 100 technology solutions, websites, apps, and B2B systems. She is a worldwide public speaker and the former president of one of the most prestigious Toastmaster groups in Vancouver, British Columbia, called the Vancouver Entrepreneurs Toastmaster Club. Galya is a recent TEDx speaker at TEDx Stanley Park, performed at the Queen Elizabeth Theatre in front of 3,000 people, and talks about social media and our loneliness. As a female leader, her goal in life is to inspire women to be greater than life and to set an example for others to follow. Galya, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Can I just ask you, one of the things that I am so interested as sort of a non-public speaker, I don't know what you call those people, is the Queen Elizabeth Theater. That's the New York one, or what is that?
That's the one in Vancouver.
Oh, Vancouver. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a live theater performance, is that right?
It is, yeah.
Have you always been in theater?
I haven't. No, I've been a dancer when I was in high school, so I performed a little bit.
Yeah.
But I never thought I would perform in such a big theater.
That's awesome. I'm sure, I would imagine it is quite a ride and quite an experience and really awesome
It was.
Yeah. Well, share with us a little bit. We'll get into your current company, but I would love to know a little bit about your background and kind of what you've done and how you have made this transition into the entrepreneurial world.
Yeah, sure. So my background begins when I was a student. I was studying software engineering in a university in Tel Aviv in Israel. And I've worked almost throughout my career in customer service roles, which I find to be a very good basis for anyone wanting to do business and anyone that wants to participate and proceed with his career and to work with other people, is the ability to give really high customer service. So that was the beginning. That's how I started. Yeah. And I've done that in order to pay for my tuition. And then later on, I've started working in quality assurance. So people that come from the software world, they know that there's a very important people in the software development lifecycle called quality assurance engineers. And they make sure that everything is of high quality, and they do different kinds of tests to the software.
Oh, okay.
And then after that,
I love people like you, because those are the things when some system goes down, it's like, didn't they test this? This can't only be happening to me. And instantly it's that, I feel like my emotions start chipping away at brand credibility and all of that. Such an important, awesome role. It's amazing that software companies have people dedicated specifically to that, but it's so needed.
Yeah, it is. It's a very integral part of any software company. And I think that, looking at my experience, I have played almost every part other than actual development and coding. And every role is important. And like you said, like quality assurance is so important. But even as a manager and even as an owner, you always do quality assurance, same as you always do customer service.
Right. So that's interesting. So as you were doing quality assurance and customer service, was that as a software engineer, or that was okay? Yes.
Yeah, it was. So first of all, I did my degree, and then throughout my degree, I worked.
Okay.
To pay my tuition, right? So when I worked as mostly customer service. Mm-hmm. I've done some other odd jobs, like private tutoring and stuff like that.
Hey,
I was even a security guard.
Oh, that one's a very odd job.
Well, as a student, you basically take on any job, right?
Right.
And then later on, as my career progressed, I progressed to be what is called a business analyst. That's the person that gathers the requirements. And then a project manager, and then a product manager.
Okay. So then so tell us about Plazus, what you're doing now, and how that concept began.
Yeah, so it began actually with my other company, which is a consulting company called To Galvanize. And with To Galvanize, I started providing services in senior product management. So a product manager, for people that are not really aware of that role, it's a very important role that is the person that gathers all the requirements and works with the client to make sure that the vision of the client comes to life. And it's the person that usually manages the whole process and creates the prototypes and manages the technical team all the way to launching. So what had happened in my career is I've had the opportunity to move to Vancouver. I first moved to Victoria. I've had the opportunity to move to Vancouver with a very lucrative contract that I received as a senior project manager. And then they told me that if I were to incorporate, they're going to pay me more per hour.
Oh, so okay. Well, good for you. That's great.
But what I didn't know is that when you incorporate, you have to pay a lot of fees and you have to take a lot of responsibilities. And sometimes incorporation is not the right path to begin with as an entrepreneur, because if you're a solopreneur, and in fact, if you're not earning, high amounts of money, it's better. I don't know how it is in the US, but in Canada, it's better to be a sole proprietor rather than incorporation, and then you pay less fees. And you might even get the same benefit. So in any case, that was my path to having incorporation, and it started with consulting services. And I've been doing that in parallel to having a full-time job as well, because I basically bounced from being a contractor. As you know, as a lot of people know, freelance work, you do contract, and you can do that as a corporation. But working as a contractor, and I still do some contract jobs, it is highly unstable. At the end of the day, I found myself in a situation where I wanted to create something of my own. I wanted to create my own product. And I just so happened to be very lucky to know, quite a lot of people in the city. And the angels that I've met, they worked with me in the past, so they knew what I was capable of doing. And they decided to invest in a new company called Plazus.
That's fantastic. So you had, so this trajectory doesn't fit the normal mold. What a lot of times when I'm interviewing startup entrepreneurs, they had an idea, but then they had to go out and get funding. But you had investors that you already knew in your network and basically said, we can fund this if you want to do it. That sounds like a dream. Is that a better way to go? Like, having been down that road, ideally that has to be the better path, right?
That's interesting. They say it sounds like a dream, because it wasn't a dream. No, it actually came in an extremely difficult time in my life. For those that are going to watch the TED that I did, I talk about the loss of my brother. And during that time, he was basically going through dying phases. So I was in and out of Canada. I went back to Israel a few times, and when I met these investors, I was in the midst of it all. And it does sound like a dream, but honestly, I didn't come with an approach of, oh, please invest in me. I wasn't. I was just like, he said, hey, what are you working on? I said, I'm working on these things, and I have 3 ideas for a startup. He goes, oh, tell me what they are. And I give him the ideas, and he's like, I'm going to invest in that one. That's an amazing idea.
That's fantastic. Okay, so you got investment. You started the company. How long ago did you start the company?
Company started exactly a year ago, almost a year ago, in February of last year.
What would you say in year one has been the biggest challenge?
I think the biggest challenge is still funding, because when I was raising, I didn't raise a lot. We raised actually very little, but fortunately for me, having a lot of experience in the software world, I'm very good at negotiation. So we were able to, yes, it's a very good skill to have. And I actually gained that skill back when I was in university, because I would negotiate with other classmates to help me.
That's fantastic. You never know where the skills come from, but that's a life skill.
And so I would say funding because, when the reason why Plazus was able to be conceived and to launch to the air a few months ago with a very little budget is because we were able to negotiate really good prices with with different people that were involved.
Yeah.
And we had a large team that was able to support us, and then investors supported us as well. But still it is funding, and I would even say, as much as I'm a project manager and a product manager, I would say planning was lacking.
Oh,
Because like a lot of entrepreneurs, they fall in love with their product. And they don't understand that a product is like their baby, but some people may think that the baby is not good looking enough.
Right.
And they may not want to hold the baby and let him walk. So you're the one who's supposed to carry the baby, close to your chest and take care of it. And one of the ways to take care of it is obviously you want to make sure that you're launching correctly, but you also want to make sure that you have a longer runway. Right. And that's not something that unfortunately is happening right now. So we do have to raise more money right now. But at the same time, I have to say the success is not necessarily in the monetary value. Because the way you measure success is what was your budget? How did you use that budget? What was your connections and your relationship with the team that was involved? And where are you at right now? And what is your projection for the future?
Right.
So first of all, the journey was amazing. And where we are right now is we actually have roughly around 500 users, and we do have a few paying customers. And the projection of where we want to go is we want to tap into influencers and people that, and I can talk about what Plazus is.
Yeah.
So basically the projection is that we want to achieve at least 30,000 users in the next couple of months while we're raising more money.
Now for just a 1-year-old company to build a platform and have 500 users using the platform, that's fantastic in a 1-year time frame. And I do I've talked to a lot of entrepreneurs just on this podcast and then also at networking events or just through our own connections. And one of the things I consistently hear is I want to be the unicorn, right? We want overnight massive success. And there are companies that do that. But I also like when people share, okay, realistically, here's what we did. And that's great too. And you will, grow from there. And I think 30,000 users is a very attainable number. So that's great.
Yeah, I agree. And, and I think that when you are I can't say I'm a public figure, but some people, they do know me, and I have the exposure through the TED, and I do different public speaking events. And it's very important as a person that speaks publicly is to deliver a message. And I think the message is very, very harsh, specifically for women and for men, that when you are an entrepreneur, or even when you're in your career path, the expectations are extremely high. And that's why I'm not saying lowering your expectations, but people have to be realistic because there's a lot of things involved. And if people get into this pressure, I want to be a unicorn company. I mean, that's ridiculous, right? Because the odds for a company to be a unicorn company are very, very small. Right. And it depends in so many different variables. I mean, some variable might even be luck. Might even be the people that you know.
Right.
And it's and you can walk through this path and you can do as much as you can to be successful, but sometimes you will not be that unicorn company, and that's okay.
And that's okay. Like, I just want to hug the not unicorn companies too. That's okay. You're out there doing it, and there's a lot of value. And I'm so glad we're calling this out, because just what you were saying, when the product or the service is yours and it's your baby, and someone tells you your baby is ugly, there's so much like emotion that comes with that. And we all know how hard we're all working and the hours we're putting in to do this thing that so many people think is impossible. And so there's so much emotional pressure. And I feel like as entrepreneurs, we have to be real about it too. Like, it's okay. You're growing and doing the thing you wanted to do. And,
that's exactly right. And, the way to approach that is actually when I approach projects. So when I have customers come in and they say, I want to build this app, I want to build this website, I want to do something, then obviously they want to build a spaceship. They want to build the unicorn.
The big, yeah.
Exactly. But as a product person, it is your job to show them the milestones along the way. And some people, even though they want to be the unicorn, maybe one of the milestones is for them to be financially independent.
Yeah.
It's for them to be, it's for them to be free. It's for them to be an entrepreneur without a boss and to be able to choose their clients and to choose the schedule of the day. And that's a success as well.
Right.
For them to make maybe 100,000, maybe 200,000 is enough. It's for them to travel around the world and work remotely. That's another type of success.
Right. No, I think that's really smart. So tell us about Plazus and what you're doing.
Sure. So Plazus is a platform that allows anybody to create their own private social network. And the way we see this with the competition is with email marketing. And I'll tell you why. So our ideal client is a client that has a tribe around them, somebody that has a following. And a following is not enough. A following doesn't mean that you have engagement. A following can mean, I can have like 1 million users on my Twitter account, but it doesn't mean that they're actually engaging with me.
Right.
So companies that have a following and a tight community around them, they need a way to communicate. And unfortunately, right now, the only way to communicate is via email marketing, which shows very poor results, roughly around maybe 40% if you're very successful. And, this number is better than me.
Yeah.
Another way of communication is through existing social networks. And going back to the TED Talk that I did about social media and addiction, I actually talk about how social media is bad for us as consumers, but it's also bad for businesses as well, because they're simply not able to reach their audience at a high engagement level. In fact, the numbers show as low as 6%.
Well, I will speak on behalf of all of our clients, because this is one thing that we are constantly working on. One of the challenges with social media, and I do see a lot of benefits for our clients, but one of the challenges are continually changing algorithms. So that's one thing where it used to be a couple of years ago, for any piece of content you would put out there, 16% of your audience would see it. Now it's dropped. And so our clients are generally looking to leveraging big data or leveraging advertising dollars. Like, there's different things to do, but it does take, it takes professional guidance. It's not the same as it was a few years ago.
Yeah, it's actually quite disappointing, the path that the big social networks have chosen to take, and that's the path of thinking about their pocket and not really thinking about connecting people. And I think that the solution that Plazus is bringing is a true solution. We've seen that with different use cases where you see a tribe, for example, a tribe that is around a public speaker, or a tribe that is around the club or around a department in school. And you see the numbers go up to 99% engagement, because when you give them the opportunity to have their own app, a white label app, versus the option for them to develop their own, which costs tens of thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
They're able to provide this app to their users, and they download the app, and then through the push notifications and the targeted push notifications, they get really high engagement. Now, the engagement obviously comes from the technicality of pushing, notifying them, but it's also because it's a clean environment without the white noise around. And like you said, you have no control when you're using existing social network, existing tools, but when you're using Plazus and you can customize it to your needs, you can control, first of all, what is the content, and the content has to be super engaging. And you control to whom you're going to have them consume that content. And that's why the numbers have shown really high engagement.
That's fantastic. And so, to your point, the best users of Plazus are people who already have an audience, right?
That's right. That's right.
So I am at, what is the best way to move your audience over to Plazus? Is it like, is there an invitation option, or how does that work?
So the way it works, you're asking about our marketing initiative, or how do people use Plazus?
Yeah, so how people use Plazus. So if I'm a university and I have, 1 million student followers on one of my Facebook pages, how can I get them over to Plazus?
So the way to do that is actually they have to do some internal work themselves. So they have to look at their organization. And again, when people watch the TED Talk, they will notice that I talk about a researcher called the Dunbar. And there's a thing called the Dunbar number, which is the number of meaningful relationships that the human brain can consume. And it's roughly around 150. So
Okay.
what I'm saying is that it's based on scientific proof is that people cannot consume more than, average of 150 relationships. So even if they wanted to have 1 million people in their community, it's simply not possible. And that's why you see the effect that Facebook, for example, has on human beings. You can see that, you can read that in a book called Hooked by Nir Eyal. There's many researches done by that, and calls to actions, how you can deal with that. But my call to action in my TED is you have to do the internal work. So as an organization, you have responsibility for your members, and you have to understand what are the different departments, what are the different main interests. And so what's going to end up happening is going to have different groups.
Right.
So what they can do is they can go to Plazus.com and they can set up one app and then a few groups within the app, or they can set up multiple apps. So we've seen this with universities.
Right.
They wanted it for each and every department, and every department is roughly around 100 to 150 people.
Oh, that's fantastic.
It's
like
amazing to see how it's possible.
Like somehow the stars just aligned for you perfectly on that. That's really great.
I hope so.
Tell us about, so I know you talk on social media and loneliness. Share a little bit, what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, so I actually used the story of my brother to convey a message. And the message is that out of 5,000 people that I have on the different social networks, or that I had at that point, I can barely reach out to 5 people when trauma hits you. And that really is the message, is that it doesn't really matter how many people you have in your network. What matters is the purpose and the authenticity. So I talk about a movement of authenticity, and I welcome the audience and everybody that was there, the theater, and everybody that has been watching online, is to get in touch with their authenticity and realize what are the different true mutual interest groups that they want to belong to. And then, when people interview me, they ask me the question like, well, how did I do that in terms of my loneliness? Well, when I arrived to Vancouver, I didn't know anyone. And my mutual interest group was the Toastmasters group.
Got it.
And so our main, our tribe is around public speaking.
Got it.
Right?
Got it.
And your tribe might be around marketing or around your company. So you have your culture within your company.
Yeah.
And the reason why you feel content is because you are tapping into those different mutual interest groups. So first of all, you have the close circle of friends and family. But beyond that, you need to surround yourself with authentic groups that you belong to.
Right.
And when you do that, you can overcome loneliness.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. And what I like about that point is you're saying groups, not just group. Like, so for me, I like hiking, I like camping, I have 2 kids, so we get into the kid realm. So we do have like these pods of groups. Like we know if we want to go camping, here are some people who might want to come with us. If we're doing some kid things, for the holidays, here are some people we might want to, invite with us. And it is really great to know what those interests are, or what those pieces of your values are, so that you have groups to support all those things and you get to do all of those things.
That's right. And, I gave the example of my brother, and I said, when my brother was really sick, we ended up doing a campaign to raise funds to try this experimental drug that unfortunately didn't work.
Yeah.
It's amazing to see how with the forms of mutual interest groups and different groups that he used to belong to, he was the one who did all the work. And mind you, he didn't do anything because he was very, very sick. He could barely talk. But because of the life work that he has done, all these different groups created the buzz around the campaign, and that's how we were able to raise so much money. It was unbelievable.
Wow.
And as I was writing my speech, I said to myself, I want to honor my brother and dedicate the speech to him, but I didn't realize how profound the message was.
Isn't it amazing when you look, like one of the things I try and look at when something awesome happens, where I feel like, you know what, the stars just aligned, this awesome thing just happened, I actually try and like reverse engineer that situation. I'm like, okay, this awesome thing happened, but I met that person through this person, and that person and I used to do this together. And I kind of back that journey out, because that's one thing we don't know. Like, we know where we want to go, but we don't know all of those steps we have to take to get there. And
That's
so
right.
I always think it's really amazing to look at that, look at those steps, look back and appreciate those. And I think it's also really motivational. It's like, oh yeah, keep doing that,
Yeah, that's right. Especially when it's extremely tough. And I think like one of the key things to be an entrepreneur is persistence.
Yeah.
You have to be persistent. You have to be extremely strong in your mind in order to endure all the different difficulties, because it's not going to be an easy path.
Right.
And if people think it's going to be an easy path, then I'm not sure, entrepreneurship is the right path for them.
I always tell people it looks more glamorous from the outside looking in. People say, oh, work from anywhere and, make your own schedule, which is true in a lot of regards, but
yeah,
there's a lot of other things happening. It's not all,
Yeah, that's right.
I think that's the perfect note to end on. Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
Oh, you're welcome.